we're doing today is we are welcoming CMA member Giuliana Wheater. And Giuliana has been incredibly successful, it has to be said. But it hasn't been a straightforward journey, has it, Giuliana? So would you, one of the things is, we love to highlight the achievements of CMA members. And so this is something that I've been wanting to do for some time with Giuliana, but also with the rest of you, because, the thing is, our members are absolutely outstanding, extraordinary, amazing people. And you do amazing things. And so we love to highlight you in the newsletter and, of course, on the CMA website, and of course on events like this. So Giuliana, can I ask you to introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about your work?
Oh my goodness, I don't know where to start. Well, I'm Giuliana Wheater. I've been working as a complementary therapist for well over 20 years. Oh my goodness me, I've got 4 neurodiverse children, but it was particularly my journey with my second son, who's autistic, that birthed the work I do now. And at the time we were going through absolutely horrendous domestic abuse. So I kind of just gathered up all of those life cards in a way and thought, right, what do I do with these? Because, life happens to us all. And I just thought, what do I do with these cards? So I was massaging my son Ollie in a certain way, but I had to really tailor it and refine it at the time because it was a massive sensory overload otherwise. So he was really my very brave guinea pig. And so I specialized that touch therapy around him. And then because luckily I had to work because we were left for months on end, just completely on our own. It was really fortunate that I was able to work. So I took it into schools. I had a foot that was broken in 3 places at the time and £50 in my pocket. And I spray tanned my foot because it looked like a winter cabbage. And I had to borrow my friend's shoes, which were 2 sizes bigger than mine, so I could fit my foot in. It was agonizing when I look back, but I took it into all the schools for free for 6 weeks. And, and then it just all took off from there. And since then, I've realized that, Ollie's journey is the journey of many, many children and young people all over the world. And so I don't know, I've become this mad sort of Pied Piper. I wrote a book in secret about my work so that I could get to all these kids who needed it and their families, siblings, carers, hopefully teachers. Then I began training and teaching. I'm a passionate, prolific public speaker, blogger, writer. I write for SEN magazine, Autism Parenting, Autism Eye, magazines like that. I never stop. And a massive chunk of that is just because I want to. It's not even for money. It's just because I just feel, and with mental health as well, since COVID, it's such a pandemic now that I'm also working a lot with that. So the more I can share, the better. And during COVID, I set up a massive public Facebook group where I post daily therapies. I set up a YouTube channel. And I remember joking on there once and saying, well, COVID's hit. I'm a therapist. Most of my business is based around touch. But if I have to speak to you from a tent because I've lost everything, then I'll speak to you from a tent. And then more recently, and I don't mean this in a big-headed way because it's not something I ever looked for. I got a certificate of achievement from the National Diversity Awards for my work with kids with autism and SEN. And that was for the positive role model for faith, religion, and hang on a minute, I've got to look on the wall because I've forgotten. Role model, that was it, role model. And then really recently, 3 weeks ago, I won an Autism Hero Award. So it's just been this incredible journey where, I don't know, I've done so much and 18, 19-hour days, and I just don't stop advocating, educating, helping people, spreading the word, sharing stuff. And it's all just snowballed, really. But I don't think Ollie or I could ever have imagined that. And on Ollie's front, he was written off by his school, even though he was gifted and talented for English. He was completely written off by his school. His funding was legally spent elsewhere. The fight for him was terrific. And that was another reason why I began doing my therapies with him, was because I thought, I've got to help him navigate this world. I've got to ease those issues and challenges, because I honestly don't know if I'll even be here. I mean, it was that bad. I had to really teach the world about Ollie, but also teach Ollie about the world. And I've kind of carried that message on ever since, even though I'm safe now. And Ollie is currently studying for a PhD. So it just goes to show you that, you know, you can be flat on your back and in your darkest place. And you just have to gather up those events, those things. And you think, well, I can either sit in this and stink or I can turn it into compost. So I went for the compost option.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Can you say a little bit about the therapies that you do and how the sort of effects that they have on people?
Gosh, there are so many now, Jayney. It originally began with massage, Indian head massage. That was too much for my son. So immediately I began to refine that. I didn't do anything too stimulating on the head. For instance, you know, when I did my training, I was taught to literally chop around the head. Well, I don't do that with anybody. And it's funny because now I cannot massage the absolute Western way that I was trained. I treat everybody. No one has the same treatment twice from me. I don't do this. I don't treat two people the same way either. It's really about meeting them where they are. So what I would do is with just the touch, for example, I would put massage into, if it was little children, menus. So I would laminate the photographs from my book, because the copyright actually belongs to my oldest son, James, who took those photos. So I wasn't being naughty for once. I wasn't breaking any laws. And I would put them into menus and literally put an apron on and get the kids to show me. And if they were non-verbal, they could point, or I point to what they wanted. So it immediately put them in charge of what they wanted and in what order. And then I would put them into stories and songs. And then I heard of somebody called Mary Atkinson who was doing something called story massage. So I trained with her, and that also enriched my work. I then trained in special yoga for autism and ADHD with Jyoti Manuel of Special Yoga Limited. She's global. I'm just going to pick up my little dog. Just bear with me.
Sure. It's quite, I was going to say, whilst you're getting the dog, it's
so sorry, Jayney, about that. She doesn't normally do that. She's actually my therapy dog, which is a bit embarrassing.
No, don't worry, it's not a problem at all.
So I combine, and I do sound therapy, because sometimes I go into units where it's PMLD. So people have got multi-layered things, like they might have epilepsy, cerebral palsy, they may be blind as well, be autistic. So the vibration of sound is beautiful. And, you know, I get them to touch the instruments. I play them on their backs. You know, I get them out of wheelchairs. I lay them down on the floor. I do the touch. And the touch now is the back. It's the whole body, legs, feet, the back. I do reflexology now. So what I've tried to do, and particularly during COVID, I just trained. But the most important thing and the best thing I ever did, and this might be really good advice for anybody listening today who's thinking of taking therapies into SEN, mental health, you know, special needs, different abilities, disabilities, neurodivergence. There's so many different, I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm trying to just say everything people are comfortable with. But the best thing I ever did was get really rooted in neuroscientific training and how the brain works, and linking that and doing endless studies on how touch, yoga, sound all affects the actual way our brains are wired. So for instance, with regular touch, regular meditation, regular yoga, regular breath work, you can actually shrink the grey matter around the amygdala, which is the emotional brain, the fear center. So that's brilliant because we don't want that big, but you can also grow it around your prefrontal cortex, which is your rational brain, the higher brain functions. So things like concentration, attention, focus, good judgment, seeing consequences. And you're also growing it around the hippocampus in the back of the brain, which is all about memory and learning, because kids with different abilities are naturally born with higher levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. So when we use touch, when we use yoga, when we use breath work, we're helping to release the 4 main neurotransmitters. I call it the daily dose, which is dopamine for attention, focus, concentration, drive, motivation, oxytocin, which is love and nurture. They've now done MRI imaging and neural scanning to prove that that's actually released in the body just 20 seconds after you put your hands on someone. Also serotonin, the hormone of confidence, happiness and self-esteem, huge in these times of mental health. And endorphins, pain relief, feeling on top of the world, eating a ton of chocolate, not having a single dimple on your thigh. But it also releases noradrenaline, which is the combat to stress. So what I do is, I'm sorry, I do talk a lot because I get really excitable. I weave all of those therapies together. But when I go into schools, and I share this whenever I do any of my trainings, because obviously I train people now, I weave all of this neuroscience into my trainings, because the reason being that is the language that kicks open the doors to schools. They were released millions for mental health funding a few months ago, at the start of the new year, and that was meant to be for health and well-being, mental health, and it was actually spent on extra lessons for revision, online classes after school. Very little of that money actually went on mental health. And if you use the word well-being in schools, they tend to see it as something, oh yeah, well, they'll be getting a treat for half an hour and it's a bit fluffy, instead of a treatment where on a regular basis, you're actually helping that person to change not just the grey matter in their brain, but their brain waves, their neurological pathways. I did a lot of training through Professor Rick Hansen, and very, very famously, he said, what fires the brain wires the brain. And a child under normal conditions only needs a message repeated to them 20 times and it's formed that neurological pathway. If a message is repeated to a child when they are relaxed, it only takes 4 to 6 times. So we need to build these kids up. And that's why I thought I've got to learn the neuroscience, knit the two together, because that's going to kick the doors open into schools, which it has. So that's just a really, really good tip. And then for the head teachers, because obviously your first port of call is a SENCO, your next port of call, if you really get in there, is the head teacher. And he or she is obviously in charge of funding. So the language you need to use there is different, because they're all about budgets. So, I mean, if I just give you one statistic, and this was pre-COVID, in 2016, 120 years of teaching days were lost in the UK in 1 year through stress. So how I put it across to head teachers is, well, if I'm working with these children who have different needs, or they're going through mental health challenges, or they're autistic, they're struggling through mainstream, or even in specialist academies too, if their issues and challenges are really melted right down, which only takes about 4 to 6 sessions, incidentally. It's incredible how fast it works. There's that collective benefit on the classroom that then helps the teacher. So I'm very much working alongside teachers, alongside doctors. That reduces the stress on the teacher. So by them investing in you, the heads, you are actually saving having to pay teachers when they're sick. There's the collective learning benefit to the whole classroom, because learning isn't being interrupted and it's more inclusive. But you are also saving money on supply teachers, teachers, bank teachers. So it's it's that ripple effect, it's those echoes throughout the system that you're putting in place there, but you have to root it in saving the money and root it in neuroscience, or they're just not going to entertain it for a minute.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, it's so important what you're saying, so fascinating. So for anybody that will be listening either now or obviously sort of looking at the replay on YouTube, Giuliana, where would you advise people to go for the research data on things like the cost savings? Obviously, things like the sort of the neurological stuff, the psychoneuroimmunology, and all of the stuff that you were saying about, which is so absolutely vital. Totally agree with you about that. And you do need to meet people in conversation. You need to meet them where they are.
Yes.
So yes. So important. So where did you go for the data about the cost savings and how many days are lost and so on? Because
I actually went on government websites.
Oh, really?
I also learned some as part of my own training, but every single week I'm continually checking government websites. I tell you something else which is really, really shocking. Kids with pathological demand avoidance, kids who have ADHD, ADD, these things, and ADHD, pathological demand avoidance, are on that kind of high-end autism. The government, at government level, if you Googled it right now, on all their pie charts and all their things, they still call them conduct disorders, which I think is shocking. So that is then fed through into teacher training. If I had £1 for every single time I was told a child with ADHD is behavioural, I would be richer than Elon Musk. I honestly would, after 20 years of doing this. I invented this job, because I just saw that need, and it was my life cards, and I've got thousands of case studies. But yes, it was through my training. But if you also look, you can Google things. It's freely available on the website. Look up these things because it's all there. If you look up Professor Rick Hanson, HAN for November, SON, he's fantastic. Tiffany Field is another leader in the field. I did a lot of research under her, and she's done extensive scientific case studies on touch and yoga as well. She, for example, one of the studies she did was she would have people going through talk therapies who had been through a lot in their lives or had different abilities, disabilities, special needs. And at the end of their sessions, they would then have 15 minutes of touch or yoga, but the other group of people wouldn't have that touch or yoga afterwards. And the healing progress and the self-healing progress for the people who did have the touch and the yoga afterwards was 50% better, 50% better. When you think about our kids with autism, ADHD, anywhere on the SCN, I said they're already born with higher levels of cortisol, but actually they're pre-COVID, they were 2 to 6 times more likely to pick up a mental health issue. And I know this from my own son. And he said to me, he picked up because of the ignorance surrounding him and the total lack of training at teacher level. And this is why I say I'm not alternative. I'm actually not even complementary. I'm with you 100%. I'm with you, doctors. I'm with you, parents. I'm with you, teachers, because we all have to be a team around the child and empower that child, melt those boundaries, those challenges, and grow those gifts, because they have amazing gifts, hyper focus, thinking outside the box, who knows what they're capable of, and they shouldn't be written off. 16% of autistic adults are in paid employment. And yet when you look at the world of sport, IT, art, music, oh goodness me, there's so many areas, science. I've met a lot of people on my neuroscientific trainings and they've been autistic, so, even if you're not going to change the world, if you are good at something, grow that. And grow that around the child, but let the child feel in control. But yes, so Professor Rick Hanson is really, really good. Professor Michael Gershon, and his surname is spelled Gershon, S-H-O-N. He wrote a book called The Second Brain. He's written many papers and articles. All these people are on LinkedIn, they're on Google, they're easily accessible. I mean, you have to go through quite a maze of different things, but if you're really passionate about it, like I am, it's well worth it. He wrote a book about the second brain, and I love it because it completely proves that whole gut-brain axis and how our second brain, the enteric brain, is continually talking to our first brain through the vagus nerve. You know, we've got 90% of our happy hormones, serotonin, happiness, confidence, self-esteem, in our gut, and also dopamine. In fact, our second brain, the enteric brain, used to be our first brain, and then as we evolved, it became our second brain. So to keep that flowing is super important. You know, it's the largest vein of the nervous system, so it runs from just either side of that occipital ridge where it begins at the neck, down through the heart and the lungs into the gut. So it's like a big telephone wire connecting it all up. And without us even thinking about it, that second brain is checking in with the first brain all the time and letting us know whether we need to be in fight or flight. It's the seat of meltdown, the seat of overwhelm, dread, fear, all the unbottled stuff that we shove down for another day, which leads to IBS, you know, elimination issues, toileting issues. It's also the seat of excitement, you know, when kids can get right up there in that state of high arousal, because it's not just meltdown. It could be that they can't control that excitement or that energy that they have in their bodies, i.e., you know, with Tourette's syndrome, with ADHD. So these links are huge. Joseph Ledoux is another one. His surname is spelled L-E and then capital D-O-U-X. Joseph Ledoux. It's quite a tough read, I will be honest with you. His book is called The Emotional Brain. And this is a vital thing I want to mention for anyone listening out there. Even if you don't want to take this into SEN, it's really vital, because I was never taught all this in any of my trainings. The neuroscientific stuff I've gone and trained in myself, and I weave that into my courses now because it's so vital. The emotional brain is called the amygdala, and it's also sometimes known as the fear center, and it's tiny little almond shaped piece inside the brain. It's called the amygdala after the Roman word for almond, because it's sort of that shape. And that actually is, they've now found in recent years, that's, if you could imagine fight or flight as a light switch, that's your amygdala. That's the flight switch. That's what goes on. But the amazing thing is, it's inside our cognitive brains. And this is what I say to Senkos. This is what I say to head teachers. This is what I say to GPs, because GPs don't know. This is mad. They don't know. Our emotional brain is actually part of our cognitive brain. It's not this little fluffy well-being bit floating around somewhere outside of our cognitive brain. It's the whole person. So if we, as he explains in his book, Joseph Ledoux, you know, I'm really boiling this down to a nutshell because it is a really tough read. And not that I want to do down his book, because it's fantastic, you know, persevere with it. But if you think of the emotional brain, you have a person who's not in fight or flight, you have a stimulus that then processes through to a filter. Then the center of the amygdala interprets that filter, and then the response happens. If you've got somebody, and a lot of our children have this trauma because they haven't been understood, there's secondary trauma for teachers, secondary trauma for parents, because they don't have the understanding. So it really is this ripple effect. And I really talk about this inclusivity of the treatments, that collective benefit. So if they end up getting PTSD or they're really traumatized, what happens is that stimulus, forget it, it doesn't become a stimulus, it's a trigger. There's no filter, it's straight into that emotional or behavioral response, whether that's having a meltdown, throwing a chair, screaming and leaving the classroom, running away, you know, all those things. So the emotional brain, so if you think of our second brain in the gut talking all the time to our first brain, deep within that first brain is our emotional brain. And if the second brain sends up that message, oh God, I don't like the look of this, because it's there to protect us. It's that, fight, it's there. We're about to fight something, bash something, run away, or freeze in terror. So it will transmit that message to the first brain, and immediately, your immune system shuts down, all your cells shut down, and your frontal lobe shuts down, which contains all those higher brain functions, because that flight or fight switch has gone off in your emotional brain. So by weaving together the neuroscience and all my therapies and researching people like Tiffany Field, Rick Hansen, Daniel Goleman, he's on LinkedIn, he writes amazing stuff. This is all freely accessible to all of you. It's really worthwhile, because it's going to open doors to hospitals, to intensive care units, to specialist schools, mainstream schools. It's going to kick open those doors for you, because actually I don't even like the word well-being anymore. It's neuroscientific work, and it's important work. And this is really exciting. Sorry, Jayney, I'm such a nerd and I have so much to share with you in a short space of time. We don't just carry memory in our brains. People think it's just in our heads. And I did until COVID. And I thought, right, I didn't get the £10,000 grant because I'm peripatetic, I'm everywhere. I'm speaking to you from my therapy chalet, but actually most of the time I'm in schools. So all I got was £850. So I thought, right, I'm going to do some more neuroscientific training. So what I learned was, and I'm really happy to share this freely, because I think we should in these times, a lot of therapists can be very secretive and want to own all their work. And I get it. I really, really do, because it's a tough world out there. And maybe that's why I'm not Richard Branson. But then again, I'm richer in other ways. So going back to the memory, it's not just in our head, it's in our water. Can you believe it? And you think we're made up of up to 75% water. It was Dr. Emoto Masuru he's a leading scientist on this. He wrote a best-selling book called The Hidden Messages in Water, where he proved that our water, when it's given certain messages on a regular basis, forms under laboratory conditions certain crystals. And when it's really negative images or words or ugly negative messages that the water's being given, it actually can't even form crystals. We've also carry memory in all of our 37.2 trillion cells in our body. Our day-to-day memory of how we are is carried around our bodies. And if you think about it, this makes perfect sense, because when our kids or ourselves, when we get depressed or stressed, that message goes into our cells. When it's long term, even when we're sleeping, that message is in our cells. So like with my son, Ollie, he was always on a scale of 1 to 10, somewhere, I would say between 4 and 10 on fight or flight, always. So you then get sleeping issues. You then start spiraling into depression. Your brain actually starts to produce something called myelin, which actually attracts mental health illness. It's an actual thing that actually, it's like a magnet. It draws in that disease, myelin. They can actually see it through neuroimaging and MRI scanning. And that's really nasty when it gets to that. My own son ended up with psychosis. He tried to commit suicide at least 4 times that I know of. He was hearing voices. He was smelling barbecues and fires in his room. It was and the OCD was crippling. It was life-destroying. His hands were like tree bark. They were so coated in eczema. He was falling to bits. How he came out with that with 11 GCSEs, I mean, honestly, it's a miracle. That these kids are my biggest teachers every day. And he's always said to me, Mum, you know what, autism, I've never seen it. I'd be insulted if somebody ever called it a disability. He said the disability for me was what I had to battle with every day on a mental health level because of other people's illnesses. So if you take anything away from this, take this. What we tell our children is what they become. It goes into it makes neurological pathways It goes into the memory of their water. It goes into the memory of their cells. And really, really recent research has showed that our immune system also carries its own DNA and memory. I mean, that is astonishing. So these messages of get out, you're excluded, you're behavioural, you're trouble, you know, where is that one adult to change that child's path, to take them into a future? Because these kids with neurodivergences, neurodiversities, disabilities, different abilities, special needs, are all going to become adults. And we as parents, we're not always going to be here. So what happens to them then? This is a passion for me. This is why I don't stop talking. I'm so sorry. First thing in the morning, I bet you're all reaching for the caffeine. I'm so sorry.
It's quite all right.
So yes, there's lots on the website. Sorry, not the website, on Google, LinkedIn. Look up these people. Yeah. Look them up. They're fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. That's fantastic, Juliana. So I think one of the things is, obviously what you've done is you've taken something that is an absolutely crucial passion for you, and you've realized that there has been a problem. So you found a way of solving that problem, which is absolutely remarkable. What's your situation now? You are working, you're going into schools and various other locations, but you're also teaching, aren't you?
Yes, I train lots of people up.
Can you say a little bit about the teaching side of things?
I'm sorry, Jayney?
Can you say a little bit about there, just briefly?
Oh, yes, of course I will. So I teach parents. I've taught charities, organisations. I've gone into hospitals. I've done teacher inset days. I've actually, right now, because I just can't cope with the amount of people who need this, for the last few years, and I would do it. I mean, it's difficult online, but with COVID in between, so pre-COVID and since, actually teaching teachers. So, and teaching them the neuroscience, I automatically, from the foundation level with me, I teach the neuroscience. I teach the language that people need to kick those doors open and to avoid well-being, you know, to realize that actually the emotional brain is inside our cognitive brain. Look at how we're growing our children.
So, Juliana, can you tell me, are you actually, sorry to cut across you.
Sometimes if it's not full trainings, I do lots of workshops. You know, I'll teach parents, teachers. I hate to say this, so at the moment I'm teaching more teachers than anyone else, and actually not within schools. They're leaving the profession in droves because of the sheer pressure on them from government level, with all the managerialism, paperwork, accountability. It's horrendous. People think their day finishes at 3:30. It really doesn't. And they're dealing with a melting pot. I mean, they say there's at least 3 children per classroom who are autistic. That's just those who have been diagnosed. And the waiting list at the moment for that, unless you've got enough money to go privately to an occupational therapist, is 3 to 5 years. So some of these kids are going through school completely undiagnosed. And even if they get a diagnosis, there's all the negative, unofficial labelling that goes with that. So I love training teachers up because it really helps them understand and meet those kids where they are. And everybody I ever teach, whether it's a one-day training, a half-day training, a workshop, fully certified trainings through the CMA, whatever level you train with me in, and in whatever therapy, I'm afraid you get stuck with me for life, for free mentoring, completely free mentoring, whether you need a video clip of something that you're struggling with, whether you've got a client who, you know, you just need a little bit of backup, a letter to a school, a council, for a parent, whatever it is. I mean, this is why I'm still doing 19, 20-hour days. I've had 3 hours sleep tonight. I had 1.5 hours the night before, because I care. I'm just driven. And I just believe that if you give somebody, I don't even like the word teach, I see it as sharing. And I think I am so proud of my work and what I've built up and what I've grounded it in, that I feel I don't just take people's money and go, okay, see you, off you go. Apart from anything else they've trained with me, But secondly, I think this is growing all the time. I'm being taught every day by the incredible, inspiring people I work with. And I'm learning, I hit situations where I think, oh my goodness me, how am I going to get around this one? And I do. So if I've got that new knowledge, why wouldn't I share it with all of you if you've trained with me? Why should you have to keep on paying me? I think lifetime mentoring is essential, and people can just come on refresher courses. I think I only charge £80 for 2 days. As I say, I'm not exactly Richard Branson, but emails, phone calls, it's free. And it's, I always get back to people within 24 hours because I believe it's essential. Or if I suddenly learn something else on a neuroscientific training, I'll ping everyone an email and say, guess what? I've just found out this now. Tell the teachers this, So it's completely bridging. What I've wanted to do is bridge that gap of a lack of understanding, of us all being seen as, kind of getting rid of this stigma. And it is a stigma, and it's a horrible thing to say, but this stigma of, oh yeah, it's all a bit new age, complementary, alternative, oh yeah, and there's a lot of people out there who still feel like that. So that's why else I wanted to completely bridge that gap and be able to speak to them in language that, they can look at and go, yeah, okay, you've done your research. A lot of councils will say, okay, what's your research? So you just roll off the list, Tiffany Field, Rick Hansen, if you've trained with me, mention me, Michael Meaden, Deborah Francis, and that's Francis, Francis. Those two have done so much work proving the neuroscientific power of touch. So, it's rooted. People have been proving this since the 50s and 60s, not in very nice ways, but obviously we're a little bit more humane now. But, since the days of Harry Harlow in the 50s and 60s, this is proven. And I weave all of this into my teaching. I mean, people come away with a Bible. I mean, I don't want to put you off. It's a bit frightening, but I just put all of that into massive manuals because the way I share my courses is very, very practical. So we're cementing it in through the touch, and I'm just saying, right, this is what we're doing here. We're helping to shrink the grey matter here. We're melting, we're building trust by touching here. Just on the sides of your head, you've got areas of the head for empathy, compassion, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, all these amazing emotionally intelligent things. There are socially intelligent things on the cognitive brain. You can't separate it all out. It's not well-being. So I give you pie charts to show Senkos. I give you statistics to show head teachers. All of that information is there. And I say to everybody when they leave me, because my courses are usually over a weekend, and I say to people, when you leave me, you will be able to confidently do the massage, and you will be able to confidently approach schools, and you can get back to me anytime. And they've got it all good to go. And I say to them, you have my permission. You don't even need to ask permission. Anything in my manual you want to print off, you print off and you use it, because people won't read tons of words, but they will look at diagrams. So all the neuroscientific diagrams come along with all of my courses, because that's what's going to get us into where I can't get my hands on everybody. I need you. The kids need you. The teachers need you. The doctors need you. The hospitals need you. Wherever you work, we've got to grow this. We're in it together, which is why I share so freely. We're in this together. We're now in a real pandemic of mental health. So get out there, Sorry,
that's okay. So I think just Giuliana, just to wrap things up, because obviously everybody's got to get on with their day. Could you just so obviously most people will know they can contact you through the CMA website, of course. But is there something? Do you have a website that people can come and check out? And if so,
yes, I do.
Contact details.
There's several ways you can get hold of me, actually, and two of them are completely free if you just want free tips to add to your therapies. But my website, they're all on my website, actually. So it's www.therapies for, spelled FOR, So www.therapiesforspecialneeds.co.uk. I also have an open public Facebook group, which I set up in COVID when I thought I'd lose everything. And I thought, well, I'm still going to share. I'm just not ever going to stop. And that's online rainbow therapies for kids and families. And I post on there several times a day. It might be advice and pointers about different abilities. It will be a therapy, could be play therapy, yoga therapy. You know, there's so many different therapies I'm trained in now. So there's usually something like that on there as well. I've also got a YouTube channel, and I post on there once a week, usually on a Monday, and that's obviously free. And I don't make any money from that, by the way. I'm not chasing subscribers here, and I would never buy subscribers either. I hate that. And that's called Giuliana Wheater Rainbow Kids Touch Therapy. And each week, as part of that YouTube video, I'm the Wellbeing Charity Ambassador, and I won an Autism Hero Award recently from a charity called AnnaKennedyOnline.com. Anna Kennedy OB has an OBE from the Queen for her work with autism, and I write for her every single week as I don't like being called a Wellbeing Ambassador, but you know, I get it. But I write articles to accompany every single video I put on YouTube, and they come complete with totally free downloadable diagrams if you ever wanted to add any of those to your therapies. But honestly, my courses, all of these, I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, just as Giuliana Wheater, but I think they call them widgets. That's all on my website, www.therapiesforspecialneeds.co.uk. Everything you need is there, and a link to my book is there as well. That's called Indian Head Massage for Special Needs. It will say it's by Juliana Fenwick, but that was when I was married. But you could Tipex out that bit. But that's available on Amazon or through Jessica Kingsley Publishing. So, but you can also get it through the shop part on my website. I also do online courses for those of you who can't get to Somerset, and that's also on the shop section of my website.
Terrific. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to be with you and to be infused. And what a fantastic way to start the day, to be infused by so much passion. You know, it's just...
I always worry I talk too much.
No, not at all. It's been amazing to hear, and just amazing. You know, the work you've done is just extraordinary. So thank you so much, you know, for everything that you are contributing to society, to such a vulnerable group of people. And I'm sure that there are many people listening, and I know that we've got so many people who've subscribed for this particular session.
Wow.
And so obviously not everybody can make it at the time, but there are an awful lot of people that have registered for this call. So it's obviously struck a very a chord with a lot of people. So
that's wonderful.
It is.
That's made my month. That's wonderful.
Oh, pleasure. Absolutely super. Well, Giuliana, thank you. Thank you for being with us, and everybody, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, obviously Giuliana's given us her contact details and so on. So Giuliana, I hope I'm not taking taking liberties by saying that you'd be able to get back to people if they have any questions.
Absolutely. And if you want to email me direct, do you want my email?
Yes, if you can tell us.
I mean, it's on my website anyway, but it's info@therapiesforspecialneeds.co.uk. If you don't want to trawl all through my website, but it is on there as well.
That's a nice easy email address to remember.
Yeah.
Thank you. Giuliana, you've been amazing, and thank you so much for joining us today. And everybody, thank you so much for being with us. It's been just such a pleasure, and
thank you for making this possible, Jayney, and for all the work you do. I know what that takes, all the weekly newsletters, the monthly stuff, so it's reciprocated, very much so.
Oh, that's really lovely. Thank you very much indeed. So everybody, I just want to wish you a beautiful day. Have the best day imaginable, and I shall see you very soon. One of the next things coming up, just to remind you of, is that I'm running on the 9th of July, the resilience and positive psychology training. That's the train the trainer. So that's a professional level training for practitioners only, and also, of course, also for teachers. But you've got to be qualified in order to do that course. So the details of that are on the CMA website. And it's so that's the next thing coming up. And then we've also got, on an ongoing basis, if you're looking for yet another training under your belt, very, very important, which is the certification in integrative immunopathology, which has been put together by two of the world's leading immunopathologists and neuroendocrinologists, Dr. Peter Kay and Dr. Frank Sabatino. So there's quite a lot, and we are putting more courses together for you. These are the sorts of courses that are not taught by our members. We certainly don't want to tread on any of our members' toesies. That would be wrong. But we do realise there is a certain place for us to bring in some of the more science-based courses. So as you were saying, Giuliana, with the neurology, the neuropsychology is so important, and it's just not known about enough. So this is something that obviously we're bringing to the fore from a really academic standpoint as well. Very important for practitioners. Just looking at some of the comments, we've got one from our lovely Albert, Songbird Albert. Thank you, ladies. This felt extremely relevant, being a PD. I'll be in touch, Julia. This is fascinating, very inspirational. We've got Jill, lovely Jill Swires, saying thank you so much, so inspirational. Claudia says amazing, with such an inspiration, great enthusiasm, thank you so much. And then Emma and Sandra had to step out because they had to go into other meetings, but they really loved this presentation. And Janet, lucky Janet, I don't think she can hear us at the moment because she's on a beach in Cyprus and the sound wasn't working too well, so she's going to catch up later. But Janet, when you're watching this later, hello there, we're all very jealous. So have a beautiful day, Mika. It's lovely to see you too. Leslie, Sharon, all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. It is absolutely beyond appreciated.
Yes.
Sterling effort, everybody. Well done. See you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jayney.
Thanks, Giuliana, love. All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.